You want something to drink? I got you. I got you. I got you.
Happy 40.
Oh man, go ahead. Well, stop it. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Oh man, chef's got to stop.
And a lot of times people looking for who ribbons around the neck from this point. Yeah.
I have been doing well. How are you doing, Coach? Oh, the one on the History Channel? Yeah.
Congressman.
Appreciate that. Thank you for watching.
As a congressman, you must say something like him, too. As a congressman, you must say something like him, too. Right.
Yes.
Say something like him.
Okay.
Where's Johnny?
Who has a pen? If you have a woman.
Let me express my thanks to all of you who are present, members of the media, and our host for today. It's next Saturday. Rainbow Push is sending 4 buses of children across the South. Ozarka Black colleges again scholarships. And the national convention will be June 28th through July 2nd. Most of the candidates in 2020 already signed up to be here. You'll hear more about that in the days to come. I'll make a few observations about Kim Foxx. I want Dorothy Brown, Reverend Moss, and Congressman Rush and Jonathan to make comments. Some unintended consequences happened last week. The ringing and the attacks on Kim Foxx's person, the fitness office, this running back and forth to New York by the mayor and by the chief, gave the impression to white nationalists that this was fertile ground for them to bring their supremacy to Chicago. They were the FOP marching last week. Unacceptable. Mayor Emanuel, according to Chicago Tribune, says he's totally against Foxx resigning over the Smollett case. Some is changing it because the white nationalists are in town. Kim's not resigning because she got democratically elected to serve. Johnson, it's time to move on from the Smollett case. The FOP has a long right-wing history and has been resistant to police and criminal justice reform for a long time. The FOP fought for John Burge. They marched on David Dinkins in New York, led by Rudy Giuliani. They marched on Harold Washington. They're marching on Kim and will next be marching when she cracks down on the new mayor, Lightfoot. We want fairness. We believe that police have a real role to play. They should protect and serve. One of the police in the demonstration last week said to Jamal, referring to Laquan McDonald, the EMF should have got shot 18 times. He'd be running our neighborhood on the car in a matter of days, vile and threatening. And then came the white supremacists, the nationalists. They came as well. We do not accept, it's unacceptable behavior, and we're going to stand with our officials when they do their job with integrity. I want Dorothy Brown to speak, and then Reverend Moss.
Thank you, Reverend, and good afternoon to everyone. You know, it has been a pleasure serving with State's Attorney Kim Foxx as my partner for criminal justice reform for Cook County. As clerk of the Circuit Court of Cook County, of course, I am the official record keeper. And I just want to say this, the program that State's Attorney Foxx took advantage of with the Justice Smollett case has been a program that's been used forever. But she has just really, really brought it to a new level to make sure that people are treated fairly. And so I want to applaud you. I stand with you. I want to applaud you for the things that you're doing in the State's Attorney's office. I just recently met with her about a program that we're going to work together to make sure that individuals with the small marijuana convictions are being treated fairly when marijuana is legalized. And so I want to just say today that I stand with State's Attorney Foxx. The expungement program, Reverend wants me to mention the expungement program. I have on June 1st at Westinghouse High School on the west side, we're going to have the annual expungement summit. And for this year, the State's Attorney's Office, how about that, is working with us to make sure that people can get that second chance. They can go on my website at cookcountyclerkofcourt.org/second chance and register, upload their rap sheets, and we'll be prepared for them that day. And I just want to say one final thing. The immediate sealing that Justice Smollett took advantage of was a law that was passed a couple of years ago, and it was actually a law that I wrote because I didn't want people to have to leave court having been found innocent, case dismissed, and still have to leave court with that holding that around their neck. So it wasn't nothing special. It's a law that anyone can take advantage of. As soon as you're found innocent, not guilty, or case dismissed, you can step up to the judge and ask for the judge to give an order to seal your case immediately. So it was not anything special done for Justice Smollett. Thank you.
I want to, first of all, thank Reverend Jackson and Operation Push for doing something that only Reverend Jackson and Operation Push can do, and that is to assemble us together around the issue of justice. Justice for all Chicagoans, and certainly justice for African Americans. Someone who's much wiser than me once said, if you don't remember history, then history will always be a problem for you. And I just want to remind all of us that there is a history to the State's Attorney's Office. Some 50 years ago, there was a State's Attorney who stood for injustice. And that State's Attorney was Edward Hanrahan. But lo and behold, after Edward Hanrahan led the charge to kill Fred Hampton, Mark Clark wounded 7 other Panthers, the very next morning came to my house to shoot me down in my house. That same State's Attorney, because of the outrage and the power and the strength of the black community, that same State's Attorney was defeated by the black community, sent home, sent into to retirement, never ever to hurt another black person again in this county. That state's attorney was replaced by Bernard Carey, who tried to deliver some justice. Don't you ever forget that Kim Foxx replaced Alvarez. Don't ever forget that Kim Foxx replaced Alvarez. Alvarez was the most cold-hearted state's attorney since Edward Henry had. Now let me just move quickly to the FOP. The FOP is the sworn enemy of black people. The sworn enemy of black people. In over 50 years, the FOP has always taken the position that black people can be shot down in the street by members of the Chicago Police Department and suffer no consequences. Let's be clear. Kim Foxx, her battle is with the FOP and all of their cohorts. Let us remember that the person who is leading the charge behind the scene right now against Kim Foxx is the former state's attorney, Dick Devine. He's leading that charge. Why? Because they want the state's attorney's office back again. And they want to keep African Americans in total disarray and whip us all. We gotta keep Kim Foxx. Yeah. Keep Kim Foxx. Keep Kim Foxx. Keep Kim Foxx.
Keep Kim Foxx. Keep Kim Foxx.
Reverend Otis Moss III, Trinity Church.
I'm Otis Moss III, representing clergy from around the area here in the Chicagoland area. I first must say that we are against selective outrage at the Fraternal Order of Police, the moral amnesia of the Fraternal Order of Police, and the manufactured righteous indignation of the FOP. I think it must be clear that in the city of Chicago, since 1977, when the African American Police League made recommendations to the city of Chicago, the Fraternal Order of Police was against every single recommendation made by black police officers, along with the NOBLE, the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives. What is interesting is the recommendations made in 1977 are the exact same recommendations that are now in the consent decree today. Yeah. So the Fraternal Order of Police has been against reform since the beginning. And I want to also say that we are here to support Kim Foxx, that she will stay in her position. She has been duly elected by the people of Cook County, and she is doing a tremendous job. She recognizes the new Jim Crow that has been moving across this land and attempting to break that down so that we have an equitable society that does not cast people aside and place them on the margin so they will never again see the light of day. We need this kind of state's attorney. We need someone who recognizes that we cannot have justice for one group and just us for another group. Yeah. We want to make sure that we have someone of her brilliance, of her competence, and of her integrity in the office of state's attorney. But it also must be clear that the city of Chicago has been part and parcel in part of this challenge in terms of transforming the police department since 1915 when William Big Bill Thompson was mayor. He utilized the police department to literally oppress and terrorize the black community. And that particular idea was passed on from mayor after mayor in this city. And so it is now time that we shed some light, transform not only the police department, but recognize that the Fraternal Order of Police has not been a friend to the African American community. And even when African American police officers tried to give recommendations, they pushed them aside and would not allow them into the leadership of the Fraternal Order of Police. My name is Otis Moss III from Trinity United Church of Christ, and I support Kim Foxx.
Good afternoon. My name is David Crawford. I am the president of McCormick Theological Seminary here in Chicago, and I'm proud to stand here with State's Attorney Kim Foxx. I'm proud to stand here with so many men and women who have been formed, whose beliefs have been shaped by educational institutions like McCormick Theological Seminary. We have to stand together in this work. This is a big county. It is not just one neighborhood, it is not one city. And it is time for all of us in every corner of this county to stand up and recognize what's been going on for what it is. We have a fraternal order here in this city, and we've seen that in other parts of the country over many, many years, these fraternal orders that stand up and speak about things that we need to stand up and fight. And so I'm proud to be here today to speak on behalf of the seminary community in this city and beyond, in support of State's Attorney Kim Foxx and the support of the amazing work that the pastors, all of these pastors, do each and every day in communities across this city. God bless you. Thank you.
Senator Flint Taylor.
Hello, I'm Flint Taylor, the People's Law Office here in Chicago. We stand behind Kim Foxx, and we stand against the Fraternal Order of Police and all the reactionary and racist forces that they represent. I've been fighting against them since 1969 as a lawyer for Bobby Rush, Fred Hampton, and the families. I know about the Fraternal Order of Police. I know that they supported the cops that went in there with machine guns and murdered Fred Hampton and Mark Clark. I know about the Fraternal Order of Police. I know that they supported John Burge from the beginning. I know that they supported John Burge to the end, into his grave. I know that not only did they finance his defense when he was fired by the Chicago Police Department, not only did they support his defense when he was prosecuted and put in jail for obstruction of justice. Not only did they fight for his pension after he was put in jail and released, pension that all of us had to pay. And not only did the Fraternal Order of Police back Laquan McDonald's killer from beginning to end, but now they try to get rid of Kim Foxx. And we stand behind Kim Foxx from beginning to end. Thank you.
Jonathan.
Jonathan Jackson, National Spokesman for the Rainbow Push Coalition. We're very much concerned about the crime that is unsolved in the city of Chicago. We have 85% of the murders in Chicago unsolved. One of the major concerns that we have is how much time is being spent on such a minor case. We support our law enforcement, we need them, but we also want to improve the relationships amongst them. The city of Chicago has a bigger problem. From 2011 to 2018, the city of Chicago on average has been spending $100 million a year on police overtime. If they said they've accumulated 1,100 hours for a $113,000 bill, something's wrong with that. We want to see equal justice for all, not the police having this manufactured, overzealous reaction, as Reverend Moss said. But the city of Chicago, under the tenure of Mayor Rahm Emanuel, has spent $750 million, $750 million on police misconduct settlements. Laquan McDonald was a $5 million settlement. That means the minimum, there are 150 more Laquan McDonalds, and that was the highest range at $5 million. There are a lot of cases that are settled for $100,000, $50,000, $250,000. We also know that the economics that this puts on a burden on the city of Chicago. For every one murder, 70 families move out of the city of Chicago, according to the University of Chicago. Our city is shrinking because of the violence and lack of safety and the non-compliance for equal opportunity for all. And in conclusion, we stand with Mrs. Kim Foxx because she is reforming the criminal justice system. And what does reform mean? Taking a $300 case and moving it to $1,000 so that children aren't given permanent felonies where their life options on housing, work, education, loans, and businesses is hampered. We've also would like to see the hypocrisy come to an end. In conclusion, we remember, and we've oftentimes prayed for the life of Mr. Kochman, David Kochman. He was killed by a nephew of Mayor Daley. Officers took the file out of the police department. Right. Daley's nephew got 60 days for murder of a cover-up. We've prayed for the Kochman family. We want equal justice for all, and we want it to happen now. Whether you live on the north side, right, whether you are walking underneath Wacker Drive in the evening, yeah, or whether you're in Inglewood and Roseland, those families deserve to have their crimes solved as well. And the last point that has really been concerning to us, the police bring the investigation. Police do not bring charges. That's the state's attorney's office.
Correct. That's right.
When our superintendent of police flies to New York City to go on a morning news program, we don't know who paid for his ticket.
Number one.
Come on.
We don't know how he prejudiced the case.
That's right.
We also need to look at the officers that was doing the investigation to see if they have a history of poor police work, like we saw with Jason Van Dyke having outstanding civil rights complaints leveled against them. So we ask that we have cooler heads prevail. And we come forward, we don't have all the information. The state's attorney has more information than all of us, and she has recused herself. So she's not the person. If Jeff Sessions can recuse himself, we want to have one standard.
We're prepared to bring on Kim. I want Jamal, who's been quite active in these streets along with Will Calloway. I don't know who Will is. Will has done a tremendous job working to help expose this case. I want to thank him. Jamal, have something to say, and then bring on Kim. Okay?
It was just a couple of years ago where activists took to the streets. We demanded accountability. We saw a state's attorney who had a part in the cover-up of Laquan McDonald. And we all unified around someone who said that she was going to bring reform to the state's attorney's office, who understood that we can't continue to arrest and jail our way out of crime and violence, who understood that people need help instead of an arrest record preventing them from going forward in their life. That person was Kim Foxx. Kim Foxx took office and she made good on those promises. And that is why we're here today, and we have all white men FOP getting up looking like the Ku Klux Klan to us, all in uniform, coming out against the first black woman state's attorney who has exonerated dozens, who has decided not to prosecute, or her office decided not to prosecute a low-level felony. But when we look at the amount of false police reports filed in this city, they don't even get prosecuted because they say that they got bigger things to focus on. So don't use the fact that Jussie Smollett is a celebrity to say, oh, we don't have bigger things to focus on, let's focus on him. No, we do have bigger things to focus on, like the 15% clearance rate, and you got an 85% chance of getting away with murder. We have to focus on getting our streets safe and focus on that detective division in the next administration so that we can decrease violence in the city of Chicago and get people help and not just continue to arrest and jail our way out of crime, which the Fraternal Order of Police wants us to do to black and brown people. So we're here to say that we marched for her several years ago, and we're going to continue to march with her going into her next election, and she will be state's attorney again if she sees fit. I guarantee it. Thank you so much.
Mr. Kim, there are now 1,200 detectives. Fewer than 14% of African-American detectives. That's an issue in terms of who pursues these cases. I wonder we have so much respect for Kim Foxx. Come forward, please.
Thank you, Reverend Jackson. Thank you to you all. Thank you for those of you who have joined today. I wanted to come by Push today to thank everyone for their support during the course of these last several days. The attention to our city and the spotlight on the criminal justice system as your state's attorney is something that I wish was a different conversation. I ran for this office in 2015 because I believed that our criminal justice system was in fact broken. I ran for this office in 2015 because I believed that we needed to have a new vision for how we looked at our criminal justice system and the drivers of violence in our community. I promised then that I would run this office differently than anyone who had run it before. I promised then that I would look at how we used our system related to low-level offenders and focus our attention on the violence that plagues so many communities. Chicago has stood out for years for the level of violence that we have. We're not like our peers in New York or Los Angeles. When I keep hearing the narrative that somehow Chicago all of a sudden has a new reputation in the country, I am torn by the fact that we still have a reputation of too many young people dying in our streets. I've spent the last 2.5 years of my term working on reform issues from top to bottom. We are the only prosecutor's office in the country who has every piece of data that we have available to the public to see. So that when I say that we treat people the same, people have the ability to go into a computer system and compare cases from 2019 to 2011. That it's not just a matter of my word or selective choosing of who we want to ask how my office runs. The data is there and available for everyone to see. I have said repeatedly that we have to fix the history in this city or in this county related to wrongful convictions. I have spent the last 2.5 years dedicated to a conviction integrity unit that has vacated over 83 convictions. 83. I have worked to make sure that men and women who were wrongfully accused were able to get their lives back, including 58 men and women who sought or had convictions from a corrupt police officer. I have worked around marijuana reform. I have publicly stated that I supported legalization and that I would work tirelessly to make sure that anyone with a marijuana conviction would have that conviction vacated, not on their petition, but on mine. It has been a true honor and privilege to serve in this role for the last 2.5 years, that the last 2.5 weeks have seemed the strangest to me. The men and women of the Cook County State's Attorney's Office are some of the best and brightest lawyers you will ever see. In the time period from the time Justice Smollett was charged until the time that his case was dismissed, there were 2,900 cases that the Cook County State's Attorney's Office handled. Of the 2,900 cases that have not received the attention that this case has, there were 7 homicide victims. There were 5 aggravated criminal sexual assault victims. There were actually 58 aggravated batteries to police officers. And every day, those men and women went in and handled those cases with the same level of dignity and honesty and integrity that you as the taxpayer would expect. The last 2.5 weeks and the attacks on the credibility of me and my office. Again, I recused myself from the Smollett case out of an abundance of caution. But what most people haven't talked about is I did that under the advisement of our first ever chief ethics officer. We never had an ethics officer in Cook County. What I wanted to make sure when I started my term was that any decision that I made, even the appearance of impropriety, would be vetted by someone other than myself. What hasn't been talked about was that chief ethics officer is a former federal prosecutor who came straight from the U.S. Attorney's Office, who's advised me in the entire way. What I've said continuously when I recused myself from this case was that I was not involved. Now, despite not being involved in this case and understanding the questions that people have about it, I am again availing myself to an independent review of how we handled this case because it is owed to the public, because that is the question that is asked. But I will also say that our office over the course of the last 2.5 years has used diversion or deferred prosecution with great frequency. When people say to me that this appears that you are doing something for someone who is of privilege, I say to you, look at the 5,900 other people who have not had that same privilege. I cannot run an office. I cannot run an office that is driven by anger and public sentiment. I must run an office that looks at the facts, the evidence, and the law on every case. That is my responsibility. When I look back at how we have wrongful convictions and the circumstances around them, and some that were hiding of media attention and others that were not, I cannot put ourselves in the position of being driven by public. We must be driven by the facts, the evidence, and the law always. And so I will say to you, I am honored and privileged to serve in this role. I am undaunted by the events of the last 2 weeks. I am committed to serving my term, and should the people have me, continuing forward. I believe that this has sparked a reason for us to have a conversation about where we really stand on criminal justice reform. What we really believe when we talk about the rhetoric of a broken system and fixing it. It means that you have to have fidelity to that. And the efforts that I've had on criminal justice reform that were once celebrated by many in this county that are now being attacked because of one case and one celebrity, I think we have to ask ourselves, what is this really about?
That's right. That's right.
I've been asking myself for the last 2 weeks, what is this really about? And as someone who has lived in this city, who came up from the projects of this city to serve as the first African-American woman in this role, it is disheartening to me and to the women and men for whom I represent, that there is not a place I go that I don't represent for Cabrini.
That's right.
That when we get in these positions, that somehow goalposts change.
That's right.
We know that.
Somehow when you do the best, and that you put our office on national standards, there are people watching what we're doing in Cook County around criminal justice reform, and yet. So I will tell you that this is personal. It's personal. I stand with our partners in law enforcement every day. I have never, will never, speak ill of our partners in this work. I cannot work on crime without working with our men and women in law enforcement, in the Chicago Police Department and our suburban partners. I believe in their ability to do good work. I support them, always have. And even though there are challenges between any relationship, you have never seen the Cook County State's Attorney stand in any podium, stand in any room, and disrespect or disregard any of those partners. And I think the biggest disappointment for me has been watching that happen this way. There's a level of professionalism and respect that this office has always maintained. And that same level of professionalism and respect that I will continue to hold. But we need to have an honest conversation, Cook County. We need to have an honest conversation about our commitment to criminal justice reform and fairness, and making sure that we don't treat cases differently because of one celebrity. Because I can assure you that the people of Cook County State's Attorney's Office doesn't. I thank you very much.
You don't sit back. We'll give you these flowers, Sister Kim. And since your birthday is Tuesday, just put things in order, y'all.
Right, I want some cake.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday.
Wait. We have Kim is gonna write a cake. We're going to answer 3 questions. Kim is running late for another appointment. We want to respect you for having come out here. There are 3 levels of power in Chicago, and immediately you have a responsibility, and I say it without any saltiness in my spirit. There are 3 powers in town: the emerging black communities politics, almost all white media, and the businesses downtown. How you appraise these situations have a lot to do with how people see, how you appraise them, a lot to do with how people see them. Kim? Question? Yes?
You said that there was weakness in evidence that police gathered against Mr. Smollett, and you've also said that public statements also damaged the credibility of the case. Paraphrasing.
That is paraphrasing.
Please specify the evidence that was weak. What evidence was weak, and what public statements damaged your ability to prosecute this case?
So because this case is continuing to be reviewed by others, I'm not going to speak publicly as to the substance of the case. The case is continuing to be reviewed.
You said you support outside review of the case. Do you support the appointment of a special prosecutor to re-review this evidence and decide whether Mr. Smollett should be retried?
Again, I support an independent, non-political review of the handling of this case by our office.
Right here. Why did your office not offer what's considered a normal deferred prosecution with real conditions instead of a secret one with no apparent conditions aside from forfeiture?
So what I will tell you is on March 6, 2019, Aaron Schock received a deferred prosecution. For those of us who may not recall, Aaron Schock was a U.S. congressman who was charged with 24 federal counts. On that day, on March 6, 2019, federal prosecutors announced that they were not going to proceed. In fact, we're dropping all 24 charges under a deferred prosecution agreement. That agreement was that Mr. Schock was to pay back the money that was owed, that was taken from his campaign. In Cook County, 3 weeks later, we did the same agreement, a deferred prosecution agreement. Under the statute for disorderly conduct for deferred prosecution, the maximum restitution was $10,000, which was the bond amount that Mr. Smollett forfeited. He also was required to do community service. So when you suggest that it was somehow not how we do other deferred prosecutions, the Illinois statute allows for us to do that, and we have done that in other cases. And it was not a surprise here in Cook County that a deferred prosecution could be offered without a plea of guilt.
And when the congressman got paid back the money and got my son went to jail for the same case. Last one, yes, sir.
There have been concerns, Ms. Fox, about the FOP's protests this week and about the alleged presence of white supremacists and white extremists during those protests. To be clear here, you mentioned the professionalism aspect. Do you equate the FOP's stance here with the stance of some of the white nationalists that were allegedly involved during the protests?
I will have to tell you, upon learning that there were white nationalists at that protest, I will separate 2 Kim Foxes. I'm sorry, I just need a moment. My grandmother was from Little Rock, Arkansas, and escaped her family from the history of the South to come to Chicago. The notion that in a conversation about criminal justice, in a conversation that affects all of us, all communities, that the injection of white nationalists in this conversation, for me, I will tell you personally, I was afraid. I'm a mother of 4 children. I'm a wife. And seeing the history of white nationalism in this country, a history that has affected my family personally for years, I was disappointed, disheartened, and quite honestly afraid. On the professional side, again, I work alongside the men and women of law enforcement throughout the county on thousands of cases every year. My experience has not been in those professional settings the injection of the type of rhetoric that I see from white nationalists. Again, I would certainly hope that the FOP, and whatever their disagreements with me may be, whatever concerns that they may have about my ability or leadership, would at least expect the people of their union to not inject racism or white nationalists into the conversation.
The last question here. No. Sir, you had your, sir, wait. You had your,
Order. You're saying that this opposition to you is racial.
I'm sorry?
You're saying that this opposition is because of your race?
I am not saying that at all. What I have said repeatedly is, and by repeatedly just today, is that when I look at the history of this office and the actions that have been taken in the last several weeks, I've lived in this county my entire life. I have not seen, and perhaps it's just my limited view of the world, the demonstration that the union has taken on previous state's attorneys. In my history, I haven't seen it. And I'm not saying, I don't know what the answer is. What I can tell you is that my positions on criminal justice reform and things that they enumerated, and it was their words, they said Jussie Smollett was a small piece of this, but there were other things that they were concerned about. I've sat with those police chiefs, many of them repeatedly, to talk about our reform efforts. And so when I think of why people would march in my office, when I have to ask why white nationalists would show up at my office, the injection of racism didn't come from me. It is in response to what was brought to my door.
Let me say as we close here, when the mayor and the chief goes to New York to national television work, discredit and disgrace the state's attorney, it creates an invitation for the supremacists to come. It looks like it's fair game, and that must stop. Again, members of the press, some things are self-evident. The impact of an all-white police chief yesterday having a press conference is more of the same. Thank you for coming. You'll see more of us in the days to come. Thank you so much.